Electrikjam podcast.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome to the Electrikjam podcast. I'm Christopher, and I'm here with Richard, as usual. If you don't know who we are, check out our website in the description of the podcast. Electrikjam has guitar reviews, gear testing, tons of info on recording, like mixing and mastering. Richard, how are you doing today? I still get that in one breath.
It's impressive. It's very impressive. I'm good. I'm really good. I've just been reading about Spotify and how awful it's becoming as a company. It's kind of like graduated to being a proper big tech company now. So it's just going pure evil on everybody.
Yeah, and that's our main
other than that,
topic
I'm fine.
for today.
Well, it's happened, hasn't it? Now it's happened. Like all these big tech companies now, they're all kind of showing the true colors. So 2024, 2023 has been the year that, big tech went bad.
Yeah.
Even though they've always been bad, but, when their public perception of them kind of soured.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. That's our main topic today. We're going to be talking about Spotify because it is a big problem. But I kind of want to give my first impressions on the Katana Gen 3 since I've been playing with it for a little while. Last week we talked about it. We are going to do a full review, but I don't want to do what everyone else is doing right now and just kind of push out a review. We didn't do that with the original Katana. In fact, I waited an entire year before I did the full review on it, So I wanted to give this one a little bit of time to...
Well, I think everybody's seen the initial YouTube videos where everyone's like, whoa, the stupid surprise-faced thumbnail thing going, best amp ever.
Exactly.
How long did you have it for? Some guy played it at the launch show for 2 minutes, but it's the best amp ever. Here's why.
Yeah. So, I don't think it's the best amp ever. I think it's really good. I think the new channel, the pushed channel, I think that it adds a new dynamic, especially if you use pedals. So if you're the guy who likes to use fuzz and distortion, and you don't like getting the distortion from the amp, and you like to use an overdrive pedal or a distortion pedal or a fuzz pedal in this case, I think that channel is perfect for that. Because if you turn down the gain, a little bit, it doesn't have very much distortion at all, but it doesn't compress either. So if you wanted to throw a pedal in there, man, you can get some really cool tones. And more so than you can from the clean channel. The clean channel is good and it's transparent. And I've always used that for getting fuzz tones and stuff. But I think that the push channel is a little bit better. But so
for anybody that isn't aware, do you want to explain what the push channel actually does? Versus the normal clean channel.
It's based on kind of like a Vox AC15 or an AC30. Brian May from Queen is really famous for using them. And the way that those amps work, the hotter they get and the more you turn them up, the better they sound. And the pushed channel sounds like a pushed amplifier, And
right.
Yeah, it kind of gives it that warm, syrupy kind of character. I love that we always use like baking analogies when it comes to guitar tones. Yeah,
go figure.
Not at all. But yeah, it's like it gives you that warm, kind of fluffy tone, and it's a different dynamic than just a straight up clean tone. And you can turn the gain up and it can get distorted, but it's not like super distorted. It's kind of like a Vox. It's got a little bit of chime to it, I guess. But I think that's great for pedals. I think it's
pretty cool. When did the Katana 2 come out? Is it 2 years, right? A couple of years?
Well, I've had mine for 3.
Oh, right. Okay. I'm way off.
It's been about 4 years.
They were due kind of like a bit of a refresh.
They really were. And I think that, like we talked about last week, I think this is for people who haven't already tried katana.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
what I mean. It's
quite-
kind of they've set the groundwork for it with like the appeal and the the kind of held. And I really can't speak today. My brain's absolutely broken. They set the ground. They've done all kind of the hard work and getting the brand established, and everyone kind of going, because it's mentioned a lot. Like, doesn't matter where you go, if you speak to somebody. I mean, if you're online, you're in a forum doing research, it just comes up a lot. Particularly if you're kind of like, I just need an amp at home that's good, that can be loud, but it's also just quite useful, and it's got kind of everything all in one. And everyone always says the Katana. I remember before we started doing the site, like when I was looking around for stuff, I used to see it mentioned a lot. So the idea that, this third iteration now is kind of people like me who don't have a Katana amp yet. So if you're going to get one this year, rather than getting the two, even though you get a sweet deal on it, because as Chris mentioned in the previous podcast, they're basically giving them away now. The three's probably the one to go for because it's got a new. They've kind of like rejigged the tube engine or something, haven't they, as well?
Well, that and the Tone Studio, the software that you can get with it.
Yeah,
it's a little bit different for the Gen 3, so it's kind of more future-proof too. So that's another reason to buy it if you've never had one before. But if you already have a Katana, like me, I don't think I'm gonna get one. I mean, maybe down the road, if this.
Well, it's like getting
it's like
upgrading your iPhone every year, isn't it? It's just silly. You don't need to do it. You need to upgrade it probably like every 4 or 5 years. Right. I mean, that's conservatively. I've got an iPhone 13, and it's fine. I'm probably not going to get the new one. I'm probably going to see how long I can push it for.
Well, what are they on now?
16 is coming out this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
well, it used to be like every year.
It
used to be every year, and now it's like every 9 months is the news cycle. I just bought a Pixel 8, and now they're saying that the Pixel 9 has already been leaked. And it's like,
yeah, well, what? They do that. That's how it works. That's how it works. That's basically the tech industry in a nutshell. They release a new phone, like Apple releases a new phone, and then the reason why is that all these phones are developed like 2 years prior to them getting released. Like the work that goes into it, they don't just finish the Pixel. They don't just finish the Pixel 8 and go right, crack on with the Pixel 9. We've got to get this thing made. They've got them all done. I think this is going back years now, but I remember speaking to somebody at Motorola at an event, a launch thing I went to, and they were saying that these phones are like back developed kind of about 18 months before they actually hit the market. So the iPhone 17 will now be well into development, and work will be started on the iPhone 18, like the industrial design elements and things like that. But yeah, they work in way in advance. It's kind of like the military or the tech you get, like the stuff that is technology that's publicly available is, probably 5-6 years behind what they actually have in the skunk works at most places.
That and computer stuff, like computer stuff.
Yeah, same thing, same deal, yeah.
Same
they
thing.
Just sit on it for a while because you can't just release something like chip. Everything's contingent on things like, processors and memory and stuff like that, but it has to be stable before it is like released en masse. So
that, and you have to get people to buy it first. Like you can't release the Ryzen 9, that came out this past year, and then immediately release the Ryzen 10, because then everybody who just bought the Ryzen 9 are going to be like, what? You kind of feel ripped off. Yeah,
well, this is the thing now. I mean, we'll touch on this when we get into Spotify, but these big companies, like big tech companies, it's this constant pursuit of growth. Like they need to be constantly growing. And if they're not, because they're owned by shareholders, and if they're not delivering value to the shareholders, then they're not a business. They're not a viable business anymore, which is kind of a problem, because when does the growth stop? You can grow 100% one year. What are you going to do next year? It's crazy.
In that case, I kind of appreciate what Boss has done when it comes to the Katana, because they released the Mark 1, and that sat around for about 3 or 4 years, and then they released the Mark 2, and now that's been about 4 years also, and now they're releasing the Gen 3. So
Yeah, that's about
good
right.
job,
That's kind of what you
boss.
want. Yeah, because effectively, you're going to run an amp for like 3-4 years. It's, you might be starting to run into problems with it at that point if you've been kind of taking it around, practicing with it, going to practice spaces, dropping it downstairs, spilling beer on it, that usual kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
But no, it's cool. I'm really interested in it. I'm looking forward to reading your full review on it, and also I'm probably going to get one. I think maybe a bit later this year. I might treat myself to one.
I've been making notes, and there's some really cool stuff. There's a few drawbacks too, but yeah, I'll save that for the article. But speaking of amplifiers, I don't know if you saw this. Guitar World was talking about a new CEO. My brain is broken today too. They were talking about a new CEO, and the new CEO is
Marshall.
Super excited. Yeah, for Marshall amps. Yeah. And he's kind of like the Gibson guy who came in a couple years ago. Everybody got excited, and then he said, play authentic or don't play at all. And everybody immediately hated him. And so now he's out.
Right.
And they got another guy in. But Marshall, and I didn't even know this because I haven't been paying attention to Marshall very much, but they've kind of become a lifestyle brand. And I was in Best Buy the other day, and they have like Bluetooth speakers.
I'd say they're trying to be a lifestyle brand. I wouldn't say they are a lifestyle brand.
Yeah, they're going for that the same way that Gibson did. And that's already been proven to be a bad path. But their new CEO talks about maybe getting into modeling and stuff like that. And I think that that's a really horrible idea. And let me tell you why. So when you get into multi-effects and modeling, look at what Fender did with the Tone Master. That's been the biggest backlash I can think of for Fender in years. People just don't like it. Like, I've checked them out. The hardware is cool. The screen, the editing software, it's all really cool. But apparently it just doesn't sound very good. And here's the problem. Marshall, if you're listening, I hope you are. Don't try to do this yourself. Go to another company like Neural DSP or STL Tones.
Oh yeah, man.
Or Line 6. Because like in STL Tones, I just pulled it up, I don't know, yesterday, and I was playing guitar, and they have 3 or 4 amps that already mimic a Marshall. All Marshall has to do is go to STL Tones and be like, hey, do you want to make this official? Yeah.
Yeah. It makes sense. It makes sense to do it that way, I think, because at the end of the day, though, I mean, legally speaking, say if I went and set up, one of these amp sync companies, and I basically just rented a load of really expensive tube amps and just recorded them all and used them for my data set to build my amp sim around.
Mm-hmm.
Is anyone ever going? They're not going to be able to prove that. I could say no, it's not your amp. I mean, how could they prove it? Do you know what I mean? It's one of those weird things. So even like paying for the official one is kind of a bit dubious. It's a bit of a weird thing to do. And I think with someone like Marshall, they'd be better off doing something like what Boss has done with the Katana rather than trying to double into an already pretty saturated market. It's not just saturated, it's saturated with like really good products as well. I mean, you've got so many amp sims now.
That's why I'm saying partner with someone.
So if a big brand comes in, and just it's not as good as kind of one of these sort of third-party upstarts, it doesn't look very good, does it? It's not a good look, is it? So you've got Lemmy playing behind a massive wall of Marshalls, and then now they're making just inferior amp sims. It's a bit, and the thing with the Bluetooth speakers and the headphones, it's not a good look. I remember they've had the headphones out in the UK for a long time, because I remember I got sent a pair when I used to work in London to review for a magazine that I was working on, and they weren't very good. So what they're doing is effectively they're just getting these headphones and Bluetooth speakers made for cheap in China by some OEM, which are 10 a penny, and then just slapping on some Marshall branding and then hoping to do a Beat. Well, that's what Beats did. Beats, the headphones company that Apple bought.
Oh yeah,
that's what they did. They were just awful headphones, like god awful headphones, super expensive, awful. Like the components were cheap, just cheap rubbish. There was nothing proprietary about them. They were mass produced in China and just packaged up in beads. It was just a marketing exercise that did really well because people are really susceptible to marketing these days. So that my initial reaction is that's what Marshall's trying to go after because it's easy money. Because if you can do it, you can leverage your brand and get enough idiots to buy them, then you're going to make a lot of money because the profit margin on those things is enormous.
Well, it's not guitar players that are buying them. It's people who recognize Marshall from seeing them on the stage. So herein lies the problem with that.
Or people that buy Metallica t-shirts from Topshop and they don't know who Metallica is.
Right. Well, I mean,
they just think it's...
Yeah, they just think it's cool. But
yeah, I like that writing.
If you're not seeing Marshall on the stage anymore, which you don't, and the CEO kind of addressed that a little bit. You know, he said no one's carrying around a 100-watt head and using that to gig with anymore. And no one's doing that anymore. I mean, even Metallica uses an Axe Effects these days because it's easier, you know? 100-watt Marshall is great for a studio application, but it's terrible to take out on the road with you. So they started making these little 20-watt guys. And I think that that's a good idea, but their pricing is crazy. It's like €849, or in America, they're like $1,500, which is crazy for a little 20-watt head, just because it says Marshall on it, you know? But if you're not seeing those on the stage, how are these satellite products going to do well if there's no comparison? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you don't know what Marshall is, then you're not going to buy the headphones over Bose or Sennheiser or any of the other bigger companies. Or
AirPods.
Yeah, or AirPods.
AirPods. I mean, Apple's the biggest headphones manufacturer in the world now. By like a considerable margin.
Because I don't think they sound very good either.
I haven't tried the over-ear ones, but I've got AirPods Pro, and they're pretty good. I use them I use them all the time, but one of them's kind of broke. It's got this weird like bass rumbling sound in it that goes like boo when you put it in your ear, and you have to kind of hit it and it stops. But I don't know where it's come from, and it's really sinister. So say if you got a bit of a hangover and you're walking the dog, and then you can hear this is like ooh, just in your right ear. It's really disconcerting. So you can still hear stuff, but it's just they're constantly like rumbling away. Because at first I thought, oh my god, something's wrong with my ear, but it's not. It was the AirPods.
So, final piece of news, and I just saw this also on Instagram. Harley Benton, they just released the new ST series, the ST Modern, which is kind of a modern take on the Stratocaster. And the parts that they're using are kind of insane. I don't know how this is a $500 guitar, or $400 guitar, actually. It's nuts. And it kind of looks like so it's got a humbucker in the bridge, 2 single coils. It kind of looks like the Nick Johnstons.
Yeah, it really does actually. Yeah. I really like the teal color and the pink one. Ooh.
And it has that kind of vibe. Like the Nick Johnston looks like a Stratocaster. I own one. I love it. It's one of my favorite guitars. But it doesn't play like one at all. It has the look. It doesn't feel like a Stratocaster at all. It has gigantic frets. It has a really skinny neck. It's meant for shredding, and you would never think that by looking at it. You're like, oh, that's like a Fender. That's like a Boomer guitar. But no. And Harley Benton is doing it now. And just the locking tuners and that Babwitz, I believe is how you pronounce it.
Yeah. Tremolo.
Yeah. That bridge is like $150 by itself. So, I don't know. That's a lot of guitar for the money.
It really is. I'm looking at them now. They're gorgeous.
And I kind of got a little offended by it.
Why?
Because I'm such a big fan of Nick. and I play Schecter, and that's one of my favorite guitars, and I love it because it is the Nick Johnston series is so different, and it was kind of the only option you had if you wanted something modern that also looked kind of traditional.
Yeah.
And now Harley Benton's coming in. They're like, yeah, we can do it for $200 cheaper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That pink one is badass looking. I love pink guitar.
It looks just like my Nick Johnston.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
They must have some absolute wizard who works in their sourcing department.
They do.
Like getting the deals and stuff. They must just bulk stuff. They got to have some serious like logistical wizard who's going, well, give us this price. We'll do this. We'll buy this amount.
They do. And Henning Polly from YouTube, German guy, always wears the loud shirts. He was a ghostwriter for a long time. A lot of people don't know that about Henning. He's written a lot of songs, but beyond that, he just did a review on them, and he was talking about that. And he said, "There's no way that the production models are going to have this neck wood and all of these features." And the guy who runs Harley Benton was like, "Yeah, they are." He's like, "No,
that's
for under $500." And he's like, yeah, they're all going to have the same specs. And he's like, I'll believe it when I see it. And they sent him 2 of them, and he did a demo. And pickups, you can like them or not, but every other part of that guitar is high quality stuff. So even if you didn't like the pickups,
you just swap them out. Who cares? Just spend $90 and get $100, get a, Seymour Duncan in there or something, and you're laughing.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's killer. That's really cool.
Still under $1,000 for a really beautiful guitar, and it's going after that market. It's going after, because it's become very popular now. Sire, which we've done a bunch of articles on, they do the same kind of thing. That it's more modern than it is traditional, but it looks traditional. And I think a lot of players are starting to gravitate towards that, myself included. I really like that. Like, I'd like to have a Jazzmaster, but I don't want the one that Fender makes.
Yeah, I'm the same. I find myself randomly thinking about Jazzmasters. I just couldn't leave, because it's such an not an odd guitar, but they are quite niche. But every time I see one, I'm just like, yeah, particularly in that like sort of mint green color.
Oh yeah, like the surf green. Yeah,
I do like those kind of weird sort of the like the Jaguar as well, but the Jazzmaster particularly. I think it's because Jeff Tweedy plays one in Wilco, so I've kind of been subconsciously always exposed to them, and Dinosaur Jr. as well. But I'm not a massive fan of them.
Dinosaur Jr., Sonic Youth, My Bloody Valentine,
Sonic Youth, yeah.
Slow Dive, pretty much all of the shoegaze bands from back in the day. And Robert Smith played one for a little while, and then now Robert plays Schecter, but his Schecter kind of looks like a Jazzmaster. So yeah, I don't know. I guess that's a new trend.
How much is it? What is it? $499. This guitar.
Yeah,
that's how much it is.
That's for the really spec'd out version, for the one with the really fancy top. So you've got the Pro model and then the traditional model, and the traditional model is
365.
Yeah,
they do a cack-handed version as well.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
That's English slang for left-handed.
Yeah, southpaw.
If you didn't know, yeah, southpaw. Southpaw sounds much more classy than cack-handed. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, those are really cool, right?
God, they look so weird in left-handed, don't they?
Yeah, have you ever played a left-handed guitar?
Well, I'm actually ambidextrous, so I can use both my left and right hand.
No way, so am I.
Wow,
that's weird.
Yeah, so like when I used to play like sports with I used to play cricket, and I used to bowl right-handed and bat left-handed. and I can do a lot of things with my left hand. Like I can write with my left hand, and sometimes this is really interesting. Sometimes when I'm playing guitar, I kind of think like, should I play it the other way? Like,
me too.
Sometimes I get the feeling like maybe I could play it the other way, and I feel like I could pick faster with my left hand than I do with my right hand, which is weird.
I've wondered the same thing too, but then I pick up a left-handed guitar and I feel, I don't know, stupid.
Yeah, it's like lost.
I can't get it down. Yeah, I'm completely lost.
Yeah, because I'd have to spend the next like 5 years trying to get, to 20% as good as I am now, and I'm not even very good. So, but it's not worth it. But I do sometimes think like maybe I could play left-handed, but then I don't have a left-handed guitar. So,
yeah, I'm the same way. That's so funny because I bat right-handed, but I play hockey left-handed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I bowl right-handed, but I can also bowl left-handed because when we go bowling, we do this thing where we play switch up. So you do 5 frames with your right hand, and then you do 5 frames with your left hand, and it usually throws everybody off. But I just bowl the same.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm always the one that says, "Hey, do you guys want to play switch up?" And of course, it's a trick to get me to win.
No way.
Yeah, that's weird that you're ambidextrous too. I don't write well with either hand.
I don't know, not anymore. No, I used to be really good, but now obviously everything's typing and on your phone. So, what did you know? Guess how many guitarists the Smashing Pumpkins auditioned before finally setting on Kiki Wong?
How many?
10,000.
How?
I don't know.
Like how? Because Billy has final say so.
Well, they recruited apparently 8 people to work full time on going through every single application. But
isn't someone like Kiki like the obvious choice? I mean, because if you've watched her Instagram, she can play anything.
I've never even heard of her.
Oh, so. Yeah. I've been watching her on Instagram for like 2 years, and she took a little break when she had a kid, but then after that, she started back up again. She can play anything.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, so it's not going to be too hard playing the Smashing Pumpkins because they haven't been good for like 20 years, have they? So.
Yeah, I haven't really liked any of the new stuff.
The new stuff's terrible. That new album is just, oh my God, it's awful. It's up there with the new Metallica album for me in terms of how crap it is.
It's so slow.
Like it's just awful. I mean, they're one of those bands that kind of, they have like an immense amount of street cred, but it's kind of built on like 3 albums out of the canon.
Right. I would say, okay, so you have their first 2 albums, which were amazing. And then you have Siamese Dream, which was amazing. And then you have Melancholy. That was amazing. And then you have Adore.
Yeah, that's when it started slipping.
It started slipping, and then Billy went solo for a little while, which was actually really good because he used like a lot of electronic and techno influences. And Trent Reznor even said one time he was in an interview, and they're like, "What are you up to these days?" And he's like, "I'm just trying to stay a few steps ahead of Billy Corgan," which I thought was funny coming from Trent Reznor.
He's managed to pull it off pretty impressively. He's probably about a country mile in front of him now.
He's still making great music, so yeah.
I just kept running.
But they're one of those bands that, like you said, they've got 4 or 5 like solid albums, and then all the rest is just spotty hit and miss.
Zeitgeist was crap. Oceana, nope.
I was so excited for Zeitgeist too because that's when Jimmy, the drummer, came back, and I was like, "Oh, well, this is the original team. This is gonna be awesome." Nope. Nah.
He's not. I mean, I love him. Like, I absolutely love him. Like, one of my favorite albums of all time is Siamese Dream. Like, it's just amazing. It's like the perfect album.
Same.
Melancholy and Infinite Sadness, I like that album a lot too. It's also it's kind of it's kind of a classic, like front to back. Like there's not really any kind of low points in it. Then Adore, from like the late 90s, I was kind of over it. At this point, but this is the thing. At this point, I was only about. Yeah.
Machina
I liked them when they were
really
kind of
good.
like fuzzy and grungy. I liked that grunge stuff. When they stopped being a grunge band, I was kind of like, nah, I'm not interested anymore.
I don't know. Go back
'Cause
and
they
listen to the Machines of God, Machina.
Yeah, I might. But they are a grunge band, aren't they? That's kind of how I always think of them. They're like a grunge band, and
They kind of had an
kind of
identity
obvious-
crisis, though, because
Yeah,
a
they
lot of
wanted to be
people see
something
them
else.
as that. But when they started, they were like wearing paisley, and those first videos, like Siva, they were like
Yeah.
kind of psychedelic and trying to go for like a
But they-
70s vibe.
They definitely have more to it than kind of like straight up grunge like Nirvana, but they were at the best when they were doing kind of like the fuzzy sort of heavy, melodic but heavy kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't know, but it's all subjective, isn't it? Some people might like the newer stuff more than their old stuff, but that's just kind of the way it goes. For me, there were kind of there's that up to Melancholy Infinite Sadness is kind of like perfect, and then it kind of just it kind of lost its way for me a little bit. It kind of like, it felt like he sort of disappeared up his own arsehole and didn't come
Well, I'm
back.
going to say something really controversial, and I think the band was better when Billy was a control freak and not letting anybody else write anything. Because those
Okay.
first few albums, especially Siamese Dream, he played everything.
Yeah. He probably ran out. This is the thing. He probably ran out of steam. I guess that happens. Happens to everybody, I guess. I mean, he's not a
He's
young
like
man
almost-
anymore, is he? So,
Yeah, he's almost 60. So, yeah.
and also the kind of like the youth thing with like rock music, and it does kind of lend itself to that kind of energy that you only have when you're in your like 20s and 30s or younger. So
Which is
I don't
funny
think.
because that's the demographic that we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Is people between their teens, 20s, and 30s when it comes to Spotify. Because I think people in that age group don't remember the music business as it used to be, and don't understand why Spotify is such a big problem.
Well, Spotify's interesting because there's like 3 tiers, isn't there? There's 3 epochs of music's not downfall but changes. So the first one was, from like the 1950s onwards up to effectively iTunes. You had basically the record labels calling the shots, making a load of money, making bank. Then Apple came along and kind of upended the whole business with iTunes and the iPod. And the iPod was important because MP3 players existed at the time. There was tons of them. Like I had a Cowan one that was pretty decent, but it didn't really solve any problems. It didn't make, I still had a CD player, and it was kind of clunky. It was kind of clunky to use. It wasn't like seamless. It didn't feel like an updated way to listen to music. But then the iPod kind of changed like all that because it synced with the digital music store iTunes. You could buy stuff, you plug it into your computer, it synced automatically. It could hold 1,000 songs. And that felt like a massive like sea change. It was like, no, this is better for listening to music on like personal devices because it's easy, it's got everything, it's simple to use, it's kind of affordable, and it works really well. So I was kind of like, so that's why I completely consumed the entire like personal music player industry, because it just worked. It solved all the problems that people had with MP3 players and CD players and whatnot. And it did it because it felt like an actual upgrade. It felt like it was solving 2 or 3 problems all at once. And then that was kind of the way it was. And then Spotify came along, and Spotify then ate Apple's lunch by taking their idea and then just turning it into a third-party solution where you don't need Apple hardware. You don't need a proprietary account with Apple to listen to music. You can just basically stream it from a third party, and all you need is like mobile data or Wi-Fi, and that's where we are now. But now Spotify is like, they're like an Apple level company now. They're like big tech through and through, and they're having the same problems that all big tech companies have, which is growth. You need to constantly grow and grow and grow. And I mean, their shares are like trading at $326 a share, which is insane.
Well, the problem also comes in for the artist. On the artist side,
well, they're going to get screwed either way. They always do. They always, but it's worse now. I mean, artists, even successful ones, are effectively just serfs now. They're not even, 30 years ago, you were a big artist on a record label. You probably had a pretty good lifestyle. But nowadays, it's not. It's so DIY, in terms of how to actually make money. It's ridiculous because Spotify's screaming off the top, and then you've got the CEO of the company, that Daniel Ek guy, basically saying, "Well, it's basically free to make music now, so why should we pay people for it?"
I was going to say that.
What kind of
like, are you kidding me?
Says that? Yeah, it's also free to basically. Yeah, it's also free to steal people's music and make billions off it with a small investment early on in your career. But yeah, I mean, that's a really.
You don't get paid now until after 1,000 streams. Like, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
But even people who are getting millions, someone like a good example is a band that kind of recently blew up, and the best one that I could think of was someone like Sleep Token or Spirit Box, where they both have a label, but they still kind of count on people buying stuff, And
yeah.
their Spotify's, even though they bring in millions of plays, that probably brings them $4,000 or $5,000 a month, which is nothing when you split it between 4 or 5 people. And then
it's not even job money. It's not even you still have to work at McDonald's if you're earning that.
Exactly. And so, I mean, like, the music industry is it's due for a sea change. Like,
exactly.
Big time.
Someone's got to come along and do what Spotify did to Apple to Spotify. But I don't see how. This is the thing. This is the problem. Because the natural evolution of how people approach and listen to music was always going to end up inside smartphones. It was always going to happen. That was Apple set the precedent with iPod, then to iPhone. Then we have third-party apps. But Spotify
I had the first phone that ever did that.
The Sony Walkman phone.
No, it was before that. It was the Motorola Rocker, and I bought it in California in 2006.
It holds 32 songs.
It came, I think I got 100 on there.
Okay.
But I remember it's right around the time that Placebo Meds came out, and right around the time Muse started getting big, because that was what I had on there. But yeah, the Motorola Rocker, that's what I had.
But this was the thing with the iPod, that they were like, it's basically 1,000 songs in your pocket. That was the tagline, and everyone was like, "Whoa, I had one." Because I had an MP3 player. I mean, you could get the really rinky-dink ones that were like literally a USB drive with a headphone jack in it, and they hold 100 songs or something. And then they gradually started coming onto the phone. But I remember when I went to university, and when I first got there, I was in this halls of residence, and this girl who was in my flat, she was like, "I need to come get a new phone. Do you want to come with me?" So I was like, "Yeah, all right." So I went to this phone shop with her, and she was looking for a phone. And I remember saying to the woman at the time in the shop, the sales assistant, I was like, "Why don't they just, you got an iPod and you have a phone, and can't you just put them together and just make like a phone that has an iPod in it?" And she was like, "Oh no, it'd be too big," and tried going through all these reasons why it wouldn't happen. And then literally 2 years later, Apple released the iPhone, which is basically an iPod with a phone bit attached to it. That was it for a while. But because they kind of but people respond to something when it's not just because Napster's, everyone always talks about Napster like it was, some kind of existential threat to the music industry. And it kind of was in a sense, but it was never going to win because from a legal standpoint, it was always going to get crushed. because everybody was out to get it, because it represented that kind of era of the internet where everyone was pirating everything. So all these companies had to scramble to make it so easy to get the content you want for a relatively small amount of money, because that's what streaming is. That's what streaming goes against. You can still download stuff illegally, but it's actually now easier to pay a small amount of money a month and get it legally. And
well,
that's why like Spotify. Yeah, Spotify and Netflix. You can't what?
You can't download stuff in America. Your ISP service provider will send you an email saying, hey, we saw that you downloaded Frozen, and if you download any more
you
copyrighted
go to a maximum security prison. Yeah.
No, they will press charges on you, and they will cut your internet service
like a
off.
VPN? I'm sure you could do it with a VPN on a Tor browser or something.
Yeah, maybe with a VPN, but
and
I mean,
a Tor browser or something.
You're getting,
that's what I mean. It's hard. It's hard to do now. It's easier to just go through the traditional legal routes like Spotify, Amazon, whoever, because it's cheaper and it's easier because it works on everything.
Yep.
But
that's why I have YouTube Premium.
Well, yeah, YouTube Premium is brilliant. I wouldn't hear a bad word said about it, even as much as I hate Google as a company. But the problem with Spotify is, and this business model with this cost cutting and this, music's basically free, it's over commoditized, it doesn't cost anything to make. They don't pay anybody anything, really, any artist anything. It's another instance of this like big tech company kind of like biting the hand that feeds it, like Google's doing a lot recently. We covered that in the last podcast, but with Google kind of like really going to war with kind of independent publishers who have basically been the lifeblood of its entire business model since day one. It's a bit rich of these companies, I think, to get to where they are, which is, $326 a share that's a big company. That's a huge company. But they need to be, it's all contingent on growth. They're like, well, where are we going to go next year? What are the projections? How are we going to hit this target? How are we going to do this? We're going to have to cut costs. We're going to have to let people go. We're going to have to start paying artists. Like, it is never, how can we make it better? It gets to a certain point with a company this large where the onus is no longer on making a good product. It's on how can we keep making money? Because if everyone in the world they've gone past it now. They're at the monolithic big tech company now. And once you become monolithic big tech company like Apple or Google or Microsoft, it's very hard. You can't maintain that J-curve growth. It's just going to flatten out. And, if you do everything right, you pay out a nice dividend to your investors every quarter or something, and your growth just kind of ticks over. It doesn't go up, doesn't go down. It kind of stays steady. But in order to maintain that kind of thing, particularly with what Spotify is doing, because it does audiobooks now, it does podcasts,
Yep. We're on there.
Yeah, exactly. Where else is it? Where else is for it to go? Like, what else can it do to
100,000 songs a day get uploaded. 100,000 pieces of content, whether it's a song, a snippet, a demo, a podcast. 100,000 pieces of audio a day. That. And then there's the whole thing where it's kind of became like, I don't know if you know what payola is. It's an old, so this is an old music industry thing. And it kind of stopped in the late 90s, and then it started again right around the time that I got into the industry, which is around 2000, 2001. But payola used to be, back in the day, they would pay radio DJs to play certain songs. And
like pay to play type thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it became pay to play later on, when that's how Limp Bizkit got famous. That wasn't a natural process at all. And there's even a good video about it on Rock and Roll True Stories, where he explains how Limp Bizkit did not get famous by a natural design. It was payola. They paid to have Limp Bizkit on the radio.
Oh, right, okay.
That's why they got famous. That's why they got so huge. And then they got on MTV. That's why there's 3 different versions of their first single on YouTube, because they had a low budget video that they had first, then they had the higher production video, and then they had the remix video. And that's because all of those different versions were getting sent to radio stations to be played. And that kind of stopped around 2005, 2006. And now it's curators on Spotify charging to get onto their playlist. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not just that. It's just people just move the advertising money around. So it'll go to like PPC advertising campaigns, stuff on TikTok, social media, whatever. It's all promotion. It's just advertising. People used to do it in magazines, radio, internet, social media. It's one of those things, though. But Spotify as a company now, it's basically, I think, as big as it's ever going to get without kind of imploding into itself, which it seemingly looks like it might be doing, because when you get the CEO starts like making like, bungling PR statements and stuff, like saying, music's basically free to make, why should we have to pay an artist for like top dollar for it? This stuff like that, it's kind of, particularly from a company that came out as kind of like this underdog story from nothing to one of the biggest companies in the world, to now just behaving like just another big evil tech corporation. It's a bit, it's not very nice.
It does seem that way historically, right? Like anytime
but that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. Yeah.
Like,
but that's the way it always goes. You have to.
It happened with Apple.
Yeah. I mean, it happened with Apple. It happens to everybody, but that's what I was saying earlier with, it's the share price thing. It's like, if you have to keep growing constantly, then the company becomes obsessed with money, with growth, and not with the actual product. So all the innovation you do before you're a big company to become a big company, that's where all the magic happens, because that's when you're thinking outside the box and you're like trying to solve problems and you go, what can we do to better this either industry you're in or the world or society or whatever? And you put all your resources and energy into that, and you create something, and it becomes good. And if it's really good, then you become a really big company. But then you start to get big company problems. You have more employees, you have massive payroll, you have like advertising costs to just do the same that you're doing. So it's the idea of trying to spin a bigger wheel. It gets harder and harder. And they're at a point now where there's not much else they can do. I mean, they're trying to get like people like Joe Rogan onto their platform exclusively and get people to lock in, but that deal's kind of not even there anymore, is it? He's kind of just had that money, and now he can just put his podcast wherever he wants. So yeah, it's kind of hard to see what they're going to do. But it's kind of good in a way, because something like this, once there's a backlash against a big streaming thing and people start to get a bit tired of it, you get, like, I think personally, something that could come out of this is more kind of like a zine-based streaming platforms. Like, the worst thing that could happen would be that we're kind of getting with films and stuff now, where every single studio has its own streaming platform. So if you want to watch like Paramount, you have to watch Paramount, then you've got Disney, then you've got it's just everyone's got their own streaming platform for films and TV.
Ooh, you know
but
what?
You can imagine if that was with music, like, you got Earache, and then you've got Nuclear Blast, and then you've got Sony, and then you've got it. That's kind of long term what potentially could happen if Spotify becomes too much of a problem. But I mean, the record labels are going to go where the people are. But I think what's happening with the film and TV streaming could potentially happen with music too. Because if labels, particularly big ones like Sony, who have tons and tons and tons of artists and also a lot of resources, they could come up with a competing streaming platform and charge less for it, then, why? And it's got a lot.
It could
there.
be like,
yeah,
it could be like Netflix. That's what happened to Netflix. At first, Netflix had everything. And then suddenly, your favorite show wasn't on Netflix anymore, because now it's on Disney Plus.
Yeah, because they're all
now
consolidating all their IP. Yeah.
Now
so then
it
comes back around again.
Yeah.
So all the companies that built their business on like basically curating stuff and not creating anything will, well, in this theoretical future that we're talking about now, would effectively go bust, because all the people that actually control the IP, like your Warner Brothers, 20th Century Fox, Geffen Records would start being like, no, this is our IP. We want to control it. We've got the technology to do it. We're going to do it. And then you have, then that comes further on down the line with like multiple myriad streaming platforms, label by label. I mean, it'd be cool for like independent labels, like small labels, like a Nuclear Blast or something. Like I would pay, but then they're on Spotify, so you kind of need that company that's got enough sway and enough artists and enough kind of balls to kind of do it, to set a precedent, and then everybody else would follow suit. But no one does nothing without a precedent or kind of a proof of concept in big, like $100 million investments like this. So it's definitely interesting, but I think Spotify's kind of like gone from, it's kind of completed its journey from being like an startup company with big ideas to just a monolithic arsehole tech company now.
And it just sucks though that to be in the music industry, that's like a hoop you have to jump through.
But the thing that really
you got to put up with.
Well, the thing that gets on my nerves about it is that through all the growth they've had and everything they've done and all the money they've accrued, they don't share it with, like, for instance, if you came up with a truly egalitarian streaming platform system, so everyone was paid the same based on how many streams they got, and you could somehow gauge that against something, like maybe with crypto you could do something like this, like on a blockchain, you could do it really fairly. Like just create like an open source blockchain streaming platform that all the labels could plug into, and then basically everyone listens and it's all figured out on the blockchain and everyone's paid in Bitcoin, like per stream, like billionth of a Bitcoin per stream, and then it all accumulates up. And that's how it works. And keep it like kind of free. Not free because you pay a subscription fee, but then it just keeps the subscription fee goes into Bitcoin. Bitcoin goes up and down in the market. You get, that would work. I mean, I couldn't do it because I have no idea how any of that works, but theoretically something like that. And that's kind of the thing about the blockchain is it kind of makes things, it's a really easy way of making things very egalitarian and very fair based on distributing something.
Yeah,
like,
that would
in
be
this case,
super
would be
fair.
wealth.
I mean, the indie bands would get paid what they're worth, and then someone like Taylor Swift would get paid what she's worth because
everyone gets the same, which is not the case. Which is not the case with Spotify now, because they're using, it's just a mess. It's that's the thing, you can't, and because it's something that's creative as well, it's someone's music. It's very difficult. It's not a very nice thing to screw people out of money for things they've created when you are making an absolute ton of money, and they'll be like, yeah, but these people don't mean anything. 10,000 tracks, who cares? 10,000 streams, who cares? But I'm old enough to remember when Spotify came out, they had like 5,000 songs on it. It was terrible. It was rubbish. The only reason I kept the account was because it was free. I was given one for like a press account for free. And it grew quickly, and it did grow fast, but it was awful at the beginning, and it required the goodwill of people who were the early adopters to keep it going through those kind of like lean times with content. So you'd think now they've grown to this level and their share price is what it is, which is insane. They'd, be more focused on how can we help artists out more? How can we get more money into artists' hand? Like even something like allowing them to sell merchandise through their store, like having like a merch store on the thing where they can keep 100% of something, like
they allow that for big bands.
Okay, well there you go. But that's something that everyone should have access to that. It shouldn't be a premium feature for millionaires who are already millionaires. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Talk about like scratching the looking after your own. There's loads of ways. There's loads of things to do. But I think fundamentally, I think the music industry at the moment we'd like to say we're due a sea change. I think.
I mean, I hope so. I would hope so. Yeah, because like right now, I could put like tickets for sale on Spotify through our Spotify account, like if we were going to a podcaster con or something like that. But we can't put merch on there because that's like a premium feature. That's something else that you had to pay for. And the thing is that Spotify just went up again. Now they
keep increasing the prices, yeah, and they still haven't released their goddamn high resolution music, this is what I mean. Every part of their business that's actually important, the reason why you listen to it, so for music and for how the music sounds, they just don't care about. It doesn't sound as good as Apple Music. It doesn't sound as good as Amazon Music. It doesn't sound as good as Tidal. They pay their artists less, and yet they're the big ones. It's like people like just love bastards. That's seemingly the moral of the story here. Everybody loves a bastard.
Kind of true, yeah.
But that's kind of what it is. It's true, like I would happily, like Tidal has been hi-fi quality music since the get-go, but literally no one gives a crap. That it's like, yeah, whatever.
And they pay.
And they have more. They have more music than Spotify.
And they pay.
They pay better too, and they do more for artists to help them, promote themselves and stuff on the platform. So, I don't know. Maybe we should release our own streaming platform, Electrikjam streaming platform, and we'll take 1% of the money in it. They can have 99% of it. How about that? That would work, wouldn't it?
I mean, that's exactly why we chose this name, because it's so eponymous. It can do anything.
Could be anything. Yeah. Could be shoes. I've got my new Electrikjam shoes on. Yeah, but that's what I mean. Something needs to. Yeah, limited edition in pink, hot pink. Something needs to come along and shake it up. I mean, it'd be great, but it's so difficult to do. I mean, not even Apple couldn't knock Spotify. Do you know what I mean? They got iPhone
and they're the ones who started it.
Yeah, exactly. But they can't beat Spotify at what is effectively their own game. It's a real sticker. But I think I don't know. I think as more and more people kind of become aware and people start being more vocal about what needs to happen is someone like Taylor Swift to actually be more vocal about what a bunch of bastards they are to smaller artists, and then people would start listening because everyone listens to everything she has to say about everything. So that's kind of what needs to happen, I think. Because if it's all well and good, like people like us or Rip Beato just banging on about how it's not fair, but no one cares. No one cares what we think. But someone like her actually making a case of it, because this is the thing: if you've got that much money and that much influence, and all you're using it to do is just increase your money and influence, you can't doing it wrong. She's probably got more money than anyone of that level has got more money than they'll ever need again in their life, and their family and their great grandkids are just they're locked up for life. So just start trying to right some wrongs. That's what I'd be doing. If I had like hundreds of millions in the bank, I'd be like, right, now it's time to right some wrongs. Let's go out. Let's go and do it. They've got the money to spend on ads. I can buy and sell influencers to push my agendas, and all my agendas would be good as well. But it's just one of those things. It's like do something. Like stand up, say something for it. Because it doesn't matter how big you are. At some point, if you're a musician or an artist, you were kind of sitting in your flat going, oh shit, what am I going to do? I've got no money. So even you know what it feels like. Yeah, you know what it feels like. So
she came from like not a rich family, but an upper middle class family, and had kind of the leverage and the money to get somewhere, but she still had to write really, really good songs before she could get there. But you know what? I was just talking to Fran about that the other day. My girlfriend Fran, who was on the podcast a few episodes ago. I was just talking to her the other day, and I was like, why aren't people like Elon Musk, like Batman? Like, you have all the components to do it, and you don't. Like, you have billions and billions of dollars. And Elon's probably a horrible example, but someone like Taylor, who does seem like a good-natured, good-hearted person, at least from what we know of her.
Could do
she
something,
at least has feelings, where maybe Elon doesn't. But yeah, you could do so many good things with your music and your money, and you don't. And it's
I just think something like what Spotify is doing is a really good example. I know you got like Neil Young or whoever it was to take my music off there because Joe Rogan. Was it Neil Young? I can't remember who it was.
I think it was Neil Young. Yeah.
Yeah, no one cares. Joe Rogan's way popular than Neil Young now, so it's a really easy one who's going to win that fight. But someone like
Taylor, yeah,
even commenting on this, it would not. Even if it's just like a single comment, it would probably be that influential that it would force Spotify into doing something about it, because it would snowball into a PR disaster.
she could even hold them hostage. She could be like, I'm taking down my music if you don't start paying the artists.
There you go. Problem solved. We've just solved the music industry in one fell swoop.
Taylor Swift. That's all you got to do.
And I know she listens to this podcast as well. So Taylor, do the right thing.
I know she's seen my very first YouTube video ever where I covered one of her songs. Come on.
Exactly. Yeah. She comes to your music and the dulcet sounds of my English voice. Yeah, I think that something like that would be great. That would help a lot. It kick the, it would force their hand. They'd have to do something at that point. But whether that will happen is, depends if she misses this episode or not, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if her, Lady Gaga could get in on it, all the big hitters, like if they all said, if you don't start paying the artists, then
we're going to take the money away. Yeah, so if you've got like 10 million quid in the bank and you're a musician, that means you're the one of these people that should be doing that.
Yeah.
Like if you can survive the next 100 years without having to work, then maybe it's time to start thinking about the up and coming little guys who are getting screwed by Spotify and all these other streaming companies. But on that note, have we got anything planned for next week, or are we going to keep it as a surprise? Because I really need to go to the toilet.
We're going to keep it as a surprise. We're going to keep it as a surprise. But yeah, maybe the Katana review will be out by then. Like I said, I'm going to take my time with it. But no, other than that, I think we've covered pretty much everything that I wanted to cover today. So Perfect. Yeah, we will see you next week.
See you next week.
Okay, you can go pee.
Oh God! All right, I'll speak to you soon, mate.
Okay, bye.
Bye.